Imagine a world where every noise you make leaves an indelible mark, each word a ripple reaching further than you ever intended. Now ask yourself, how many ripples are worth making? In a society consumed by chatter, where words spill faster than thoughts form, the art of silence has become a forgotten virtue. Yet the ancient Stoics understood something profound. True power often lies in what we choose not to say. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, put it simply, better to trip with the feet than with the tongue. His wisdom is a reminder that words, once spoken, cannot be taken back. A careless sentence can wound, provoke, or expose us to unnecessary vulnerability. But silence protects. It creates space for reflection, control, and strength. Before we begin, I would appreciate it if you liked the video, so that you can help me continue spreading Stoic philosophy. If you haven't subscribed yet, I highly recommend you do so and activate the bell, so you don't miss any future videos on Stoicism. Today, we'll explore 9 pivotal situations where silence holds more value than words. Whether it's navigating arguments with fools, resisting emotional triggers, or facing manipulative conversations, these scenarios reveal why knowing when to stay quiet is an essential skill for anyone seeking peace and resilience. Think of the moments in your own life. When have words betrayed you? A thoughtless reply in anger, a confession shared with the wrong person, or an argument that left you drained with nothing gained? Stoicism teaches us that silence isn't just avoidance, it's wisdom in action. In this video, you'll uncover timeless lessons rooted in Stoic philosophy, learn practical techniques to master the power of silence, and discover how to apply these insights to your daily challenges. Because in a world full of noise, knowing when to remain silent might just be your greatest strength. Stay tuned as we delve into each situation, offering stories, Stoic wisdom, and actionable takeaways to transform your approach to life's most testing moments. Situation 1. When engaged in an argument with a fool. We've all been there, caught in an argument that feels like a never-ending spiral. You're trying to explain your point, but the other person just doesn't seem to care. They twist your words, cling to their own flawed logic, and refuse to listen. That's where Jason's story comes to mind, a perfect example of wasted words. Jason was a project manager at a tech company, and during a team meeting, he found himself clashing with Mark, a colleague notorious for his stubbornness. Jason proposed a strategy, but Mark shot it down immediately, claiming his idea was better. Instead of stepping back, Jason pushed harder. He pulled up data, cited examples, and did everything he could to prove he was right. But Mark wouldn't budge. By the time the meeting ended, Jason was drained, the team was frustrated, and nothing had been accomplished. Later, a mentor told Jason something profound. Sometimes silence is your best response. Let your actions do the talking. Had Jason stayed calm and chosen silence, he could have avoided the argument altogether. This lesson ties directly to a powerful Stoic idea. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." When we argue with someone who refuses to listen, we risk becoming just like them, angry, defensive, and stubborn. Instead, silence becomes a kind of strength. It shows self-control and sends an unspoken message. I value my peace more than proving a point to someone who doesn't want to hear it. So how do you handle situations like this? The practical takeaway is simple. Pause before engaging. Ask yourself, is this worth my energy? If the answer is no, choose silence. Walking away doesn't mean you've lost. It means you've decided to protect your peace. Let your calmness speak for you. In the end, silence often says more than words ever could. Situation 2. When you can't control the outcome. Life often throws us into situations where no amount of talking, reasoning, or pleading can change the result. It's in these moments that silence becomes more than just a choice. It becomes a necessity. Take Sarah's story, for example. She was a talented graphic designer who had worked tirelessly on a proposal for her dream client. When she pitched her idea, she believed she had it in the bag. But during the meeting, the client announced they'd already chosen another designer for the project. Panicking, Sarah tried to convince them to reconsider. She listed her qualifications, offered to lower her fee, and even pointed out flaws in the competitor's design. But the decision was final, and no amount of persuasion could change it. Afterward, Sarah's mentor shared a piece of wisdom. "We can't control the outcome, Sarah, only our response to it." This resonates deeply with Seneca's words. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Sarah had built the situation up in her mind, letting her fear of rejection drive her to desperation. If she had stayed silent and accepted the outcome, she could have left the meeting with her dignity intact, and perhaps even left a better impression for future opportunities. The Stoics teach us that silence in the face of the uncontrollable is not about giving up. It's about letting go. When we resist what we cannot change, we create unnecessary suffering for ourselves. Silence, on the other hand, allows us to focus on what we can control, our actions, our mindset, and our peace. So how do you handle situations like this? The practical takeaway is simple. The next time you face a situation beyond your control, remind yourself to pause. Instead of arguing, overthinking, or pleading for a different result, choose silence. Let it guide you toward acceptance and use that energy to focus on what truly matters, your inner peace. Remember, silence is not weakness, it's strength. It's a quiet acknowledgement that while you can't change the world, you can master how you respond to it. Situation 3. When someone is trying to make you react. We've all been there. Someone says something just to get under your skin. Maybe it's a comment meant to provoke you, a snide remark designed to get you to react. The temptation to respond in kind can be strong, but here's the truth. Silence is your strongest weapon in these situations. Take John's experience, for example. He worked at a busy law firm, and one day, during a meeting, a colleague, David, tried to provoke him. David was known for making sarcastic comments, but this time he took it a step further, trying to bait John into an argument in front of everyone. He said, "Well, John, you always seem to have an opinion, but I don't think anyone actually listens to you." Now, John could have easily snapped back, defending himself and engaging in an argument that would only escalate things. But instead, he took a deep breath and said nothing. He let the silence linger in the room, letting David's words fall flat. His calm response left David without an audience, and the tension quickly dissipated. As the Stoic Marcus Aurelius wisely said, "If you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment about them." The power of silence lies in the fact that when you refuse to react, you change the dynamic. You disarm the person trying to provoke you by not letting their words affect your peace of mind. It's not the words or actions of others that disturb us, it's our reaction to them. And by choosing silence, you retain control over your emotions, denying the other person any power over you. So how do you handle situations like this? The practical takeaway is simple. The next time someone tries to provoke you, remember this. By refusing to react, you remain in control of yourself. You deny others the power to manipulate you and prevent the situation from escalating. Silence is strength, and it's your greatest ally when provoked. Situation 4. When you feel emotionally triggered. We've all experienced those moments when strong emotions surge, making us feel like we're about to explode. Anger, frustration, sadness, whatever the emotion may be, can cloud our judgment and lead us to say or do things we might regret. The key in these moments isn't to act immediately, but to pause and embrace silence. Take Sarah, for example. She had just received an email from her boss criticizing her work on an important project. The feedback felt harsh and unfair, and within seconds she felt the anger rise. It was tempting to reply immediately with a heated response, defending her work and expressing her frustration. But Sarah had learned the value of silence. Instead of typing a response right away, she closed her laptop and took a walk outside. She allowed herself time to cool down, to let the anger dissipate before reacting. In the silence of that moment, Sarah regained control. When she came back, she replied to her boss thoughtfully, addressing the concerns raised without being defensive or emotional. That single act of pausing saved her from making a rash decision that could have hurt her professional reputation. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus reminds us, "He who angers you controls you." When we allow strong emotions to take over, we give up our power. We let the situation dictate our actions, and in doing so, we lose control. Silence, on the other hand, is the antidote to this loss of power. It gives us the space we need to regain our composure, think clearly, and respond with wisdom rather than reaction. So how do you handle situations like this? The practical takeaway is simple. When you feel your emotions rising, take a moment, pause, breathe, embrace silence to regain control. Remember, he who angers you controls you, but through silence, you regain your power. Situation 5. When words are used to manipulate. Manipulative words have a way of worming their way into our minds. They can twist the truth, create guilt, or pressure us into doing things that go against our values. The power of words is undeniable, but so is the power of silence, especially when words are being used to manipulate. Imagine a situation with David, a mid-level manager at a corporate firm. His colleague Ben had a way of getting what he wanted by using guilt and subtle manipulation. One day, Ben asked David to cover for him on a project deadline, even though David was already swamped with work. He said, "I really need your help, David. I've got a lot on my plate, and I can't finish this without you. It'd be a huge favor, and you're the only one I can trust." The request was loaded with pressure, making David feel responsible for Ben's success. David knew that if he agreed, he'd be sacrificing his own work and integrity just to help Ben meet his deadlines. But instead of giving in to the manipulation, David remained silent. He didn't immediately respond or apologize. He simply took a moment to process and then calmly said, "I'm unable to help this time. I have my own responsibilities to focus on." By holding his ground and using silence as his shield, David protected his integrity. He didn't fall for the emotional manipulation, nor did he feel the need to justify his decision. He simply acted according to his values, unaffected by Ben's attempts to guilt him into compliance. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." In moments like this, our actions should speak louder than words. We don't need to explain why we're standing firm or why we're making a choice. Our actions, paired with silence, already convey our values. So how do you handle situations like this? The practical takeaway is simple. In moments of manipulation, remember this. Words are weapons, and silence is your shield. Be mindful of those who use words to manipulate you, and let silence protect your integrity. Stand firm in your values, and let your actions speak for themselves. Situation 6. When gossip is trying to draw you in. Gossip has a way of tempting us. It's easy to get drawn into conversations that involve talking about others, especially when the topic seems juicy or interesting. But the Stoics remind us that participating in gossip is like wasting energy on things that don't contribute to our peace of mind or growth. Consider Sarah, a senior executive at a marketing firm. One afternoon, she found herself in the break room with a few colleagues when one of them started sharing unverified rumors about a fellow co-worker. "Did you hear about Jane? Apparently she's been saying all kinds of things about the new project." The gossip spread quickly. Sarah felt the urge to contribute, to offer her own opinions, and maybe even add to the conversation. But she stopped herself. Instead of reacting, she sat quietly, listening without judgment. She realized that getting involved wouldn't change anything. It would only fuel negativity and divide the team. Later, Sarah's colleague who had started the gossip turned to her. "What do you think, Sarah?" Sarah replied calmly, "I don't know the full story, so I prefer not to speculate. I think we should focus on our own work." Her silence and composure sent a powerful message. She didn't engage, didn't feed into the drama, and didn't allow her peace to be disturbed by things beyond her control. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." When we engage in gossip, we allow the words of others to dictate our actions. But by choosing silence, we take control of our reaction and avoid being dragged into situations that drain our energy. So how do you handle situations like this? The practical takeaway is simple. The next time gossip comes your way, remember this. Don't waste your time or energy on things that don't matter. Silence is the most powerful response to negativity. Choose to stay focused on what truly matters and let gossip fade into the background. Situation 7. When you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed. We all experience moments of stress and overwhelm. Life, work, and personal responsibilities can pile up, and it feels like the weight is too much to bear. During these times, the Stoics remind us that silence isn't just about avoiding conflict, it's also about finding space to breathe and regain control over our own minds. Take John, a father of two who works full-time as a software developer. One day, he faced a deadline at work, a family event to organize, and mounting bills to pay. The pressure was building, and he could feel the tension rising. His initial reaction was to talk through every detail, venting to his colleagues about his workload or complaining to his spouse about the overwhelming responsibilities. But then, John remembered the advice from his favorite Stoic, Seneca. "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." John paused, took a deep breath, and realized that most of the pressure was in his mind. By focusing on the individual tasks and taking one step at a time, he could manage everything. Instead of talking himself into more stress, John decided to spend a few minutes in silence. He closed his office door, sat back in his chair, and simply breathed. It wasn't a solution to all his problems, but it gave him the clarity he needed to move forward without panic. So how do you handle situations like this? The practical takeaway is simple. When stress begins to overwhelm you, remember to pause. Silence helps clear the mind and allows you to regain control. It's not about ignoring the problem, it's about creating the mental space to solve it more calmly and clearly. Situation 8. When you're facing criticism or judgment. Criticism, whether constructive or harsh, is something we all face at some point in our lives. But the Stoics believed that the key to handling criticism isn't in how we react, but in how we choose to maintain our composure and perspective. Silence can be a powerful tool to keep us grounded during moments of judgment. Take the example of Rachel, an aspiring writer who had just finished her first novel. She sent it off to a well-known editor, hoping for feedback. When the response came back, it wasn't what she expected. The editor had harshly criticized her writing style, her characters, and even the overall theme of the book. Rachel's first impulse was to defend herself. She wanted to send a response, to explain why she made certain choices or how the editor was wrong. But she decided to take a step back. Instead of reacting immediately, Rachel sat in silence and reflected on the feedback. In that moment, she remembered the wisdom of Epictetus. If you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment about them. Rachel realized that while the criticism stung, it didn't define her. By staying silent and not reacting defensively, she allowed herself the time to process the feedback with an open mind and use it to improve her writing. So how do you handle situations like this? The practical takeaway is simple. When faced with criticism, Remember this: don't let your first reaction be defensive. Silence allows you to process feedback with clarity and choose how to respond thoughtfully, not impulsively. Situation 9. When you need to protect your peace. In today's fast-paced world, where distractions and external pressures are always vying for our attention, it can feel impossible to protect our inner peace. But the Stoics remind us that our peace of mind is one of our most valuable possessions, and silence plays a critical role in preserving it. Take the example of Lisa, a successful entrepreneur who had built a thriving business from the ground up. She was constantly surrounded by emails, phone calls, meetings, and the constant chatter of social media. One day, as the demands on her time reached a boiling point, she realized that her stress was starting to take a toll on her health and happiness. In an attempt to regain control, Lisa decided to take a few hours away from the hustle. She turned off her phone, closed her laptop, and went for a walk in the park. As she walked, she embraced the quiet, the peaceful stillness that allowed her mind to settle. It wasn't that the problems or demands had disappeared, but she realized that her reaction to them was what needed to change. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." By choosing silence, Lisa reclaimed her thoughts and reconnected with the clarity she needed to make thoughtful decisions, rather than reacting impulsively to external noise. So how do you handle situations like this? The practical takeaway is simple. To protect your peace, take regular moments of silence away from the noise of life. In the stillness, you can regain clarity and focus, allowing you to approach life's demands with calmness and intention. In these 9 situations, we've seen how silence can be a powerful Stoic tool. From times when you can't control the outcome to moments of manipulation or emotional triggers, silence allows us to stay centered, protect our peace, and preserve our integrity. By remaining silent, we avoid unnecessary conflict, prevent regretful reactions, and empower ourselves to make wiser, more thoughtful decisions. Whether dealing with arguments, grief, or provocation, silence offers clarity, strength, and resilience. The Stoics knew this well, teaching us that sometimes the best response is no response at all. If you found these insights helpful, don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more Stoic wisdom and practical life lessons. Embrace silence in your own life and start discovering the peace and strength it can bring.